Rise of the Death Cult, The Crimson Veil, a Red Mist Adventures short story by Paul Rose. The Crimson Veil, Chapter 1, A Veiled Pact in Dun-shael. The mist clung to Dun-shael like a shroud, its tendrils curling through the narrow cobbled streets, where lamplight flickered weakly against the encroaching dark. The hill city's wards, etched deep into its granite walls, pulsed faintly with she runes, a fading bulwark against the undead that prowled beyond. Inside, the air was thick with suspicion, the citizens' eyes darting like cornered beasts. The rise of the death cults had turned neighbour against neighbour, and trust was a currency few could afford. Faolan Shadowblades moved through the shadowed alleys of the lower quarter, his boots silent on the slick stones. His lean frame was cloaked in tattered black, the hilts of twin swords peeking from beneath his mantle. His face, scarred and weathered, bore the hard lines of a man who had seen too much and regretted too little. At his side loped Faust, the Barguest, a hulking beast with eyes like smouldering coals. Its fur was a matted void, swallowing light, and its presence drew uneasy glances from the few souls brave or desperate enough to linger in the streets. Faust was no pet, no mere hound, a creature of the other world, tasked with guiding lost souls to their rest. It had gone astray, tethered to Faolan by some unspoken pact. Where Faolan went, death followed, and Faust was never far behind, sniffing out the souls his blades set free. The low quarter was a festering wound in Dun-shael's heart, its taverns and dens reeking of sour ale and despair. Faolan's work as a headhunter, mercenary, assassin, whatever paid, had dried up in the city's paranoia. No one trusted a blade who wasn't kin, and even kin was suspect these days. He had been holed up in a crumbling tenement, sharpening his swords and his temper, when the message came. A scrap of parchment slipped under his door, bearing a single line in elegant script. The Gilded Moor, midnight. Come alone. Bring the beast. The Gilded Moor was no ordinary tavern. Tucked in a forgotten corner of the low quarter, it was a place of whispered deals and forbidden rites, its entrance hidden beneath a butcher's shop. The sign above the trapdoor was a grinning skull, its jaws painted gold, and the air below stank of blood and incense. Faolan descended the creaking stairs, Faust's claws clicking behind him, and pushed through a beaded curtain into a chamber that felt more like a crypt than a tavern. The room was dimly lit by braziers, their flames casting writhing shadows on walls carved with spiralling she runes. Tables were scattered haphazardly, occupied by hooded figures nursing tankards of black grog, their faces obscured. A low chant hummed in the air, barely audible, like the drone of a distant hive. At the far end, a raised platform held a throne-like chair, its wood blackened and etched with bones. There sat the veiled patron, a figure cloaked in crimson, their face hidden behind a mask of polished obsidian, its surface reflecting the firelight in fractured glints. Faolan stopped a few paces from the platform, his hand resting lightly on a sword hilt. Faust growled low, a sound that vibrated in the bones, but Faolan silenced the beast with a glance. The Barguest settled onto its haunches, eyes fixed on the patron, its tail twitching like a serpent. "You're late," the patron said, their voice a silken rasp, neither male nor female, as if spoken through a veil of smoke. "Streets are thick with highs tonight," Faolan replied, his tone flat. "Didn't fancy a tale. You the one with the job?" The patron leaned forward, the obsidian mask tilting. "I am. You are Faolan Shadowblades, headhunter. They say you're nastier than most, that you leave bodies where others leave promises. They say a lot of things. Most of it's true. Faolan's lips twitched, not quite a smile. What's the job? The patron's gloved hand gestured to a table beside the throne, where a single goblet sat filled with a viscous dark liquid that seemed to writhe in the light. Sit, drink, then we'll talk. Faolan didn't move. I don't drink with strangers, especially not ones hiding their face. A soft chuckle escaped the mask. Wise, but you'll need your strength for what's to come. The Black Distillery is no place for the faint-hearted. Faolan's eyes narrowed. The Black Distillery was a name whispered in dread, a fortified ruin on the city's edge, where the chemist Kumak Nananam conducted his unholy experiments. Rumours spoke of vats bubbling with necrotic ichor, of bodies that walked without souls. Kumak's place. What's he done to you? He owes dues, the patron said, their voice hardening. And he thinks himself above paying. My usual associates lack the stomach for what's required. You, I'm told, do not. Faolan glanced at Faust, whose eyes gleamed with a hunger that wasn't mortal. You want him dead? I want him persuaded, the patron corrected. His rites disrupted, his warriors scattered. If blood must flow, so be it. But Kumak lives, for now. Faolan's fingers tightened on his hilt. Sounds like a lot of trouble for a debt. What's the catch? The patron's mask tilted again as if studying him. The catch, Shadowblades, is the red mist. It gathers around the distillery, a sign his rituals near completion. If he succeeds, the consequences will be unpleasant. For Dun-shael, for you, for your beast. Faust growled again, hackles rising. Faolan felt a chill, not from the words, but from the way the air seemed to thicken as if the runes on the walls were listening. And the pay? A gloved hand reached beneath the crimson cloak, producing a small pouch that clinked softly. The patron tossed it to the table where it landed beside the goblet. Gold enough to keep you in blades and grog for a year, and something more intangible. A favour owed by one who does not offer such lightly. Faolan eyed the pouch but didn't touch it. Favours from your kind come with strings. Everything comes with strings, the patron said, rising from the throne. Their cloak shimmered as if woven from liquid shadow. The question is whether you're man enough to cut them. The room grew quieter, the chant fading, the hooded figures at the table still as statues. Faolan felt the weight of their attention, a pressure that made his skin crawl. He'd faced death cults, spirits and worse, but something about the gilded moor, about the patron, set his instincts screaming. Yet the gold was real, and work was scarce, and Faust, for all his otherworldly menace, needed souls to guide, or whatever had broken him would only worsen. Tell me about the distillery, Faolan said at last, his voice low. And Kumak's lads. The patron settled back into the throne, satisfied. The Black Distillery is a fortress, its doors iron-bound and warded. Kumak's warriors are cultists, fanatics who drink his foul brews and wield blades blessed with necrotic fervour. They guard the gates, the vats.
The chemist himself. You'll need to breach the doors. Your Barguest can help you with that, and carve your way through. Cormac's rites involve the red mist, a power that twists flesh and soul. Interrupt him before it's complete.
Faolan's mind raced. Cultists were trouble, but he had faced their kind before. The red mist, though, that was new, and the patron's refusal to name their own stake in this reeked of secrets. "Why me?" he asked. "Plenty of blades in Dun-shael." The patron's mask gleamed as they leaned forward.
"Because you're not just a blade, Faolan. You're a storm, and storms don't ask questions. They destroy. Besides," their voice dropped to a whisper, "Faust chose you, and I trust his judgment."
Faolan glanced at the Barguest, whose eyes burned brighter, as if the mention of his name had stirred something deep within. Faust didn't speak, didn't need to. The beast's presence was a promise of violence, a reminder of the souls that piled up wherever Faolan went. Something had gone wrong with Faust, yes, but it wasn't just the Barguest. Faolan's own demons, guilt, rage, the ghosts of his past, kept them bound together. A pair of broken things, cutting through a broken world. He stepped forward, ignoring the goblet but picking up the pouch. The gold inside was heavy, real. "I'll do it," he said. "But if this goes sour, I'm coming for you." The patron laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "I'd expect nothing less. Go, Shadowblades. The black distillery awaits, and the red mist does not linger for idle men." Faolan turned, Faust rising to follow, his claws scraping the stone floor. The beaded curtain parted as he passed, the chant resuming behind him, louder now, a dirge that followed him up the stairs and into the night. The mist of Dun-shael swallowed him, but his mind was already on the distillery, on Cormac Narn, on the cultists and their unholy grog. His blades would sing soon enough, and Faust's would feast on the souls they freed. As he vanished into the low quarters labyrinth, the gilded Moor's braziers dimmed, and the veiled patron's mask gleamed one last time. The runes on the walls pulsed, and the air whispered with secrets too dark for even Faolan to fathom. The storm was coming, and Dun-shael would tremble in its wake. Chapter 2. Shadows at the Black Distillery. The mist of Dun-shael was a living thing, coiling through the low quarters alleys like a serpent, muffling sound and swallowing light. Faolan Shadowblades moved with purpose, his cloak a tattered shadow against the damp cobbles. At his side, Faust, the Barguest, padded silently, its void black fur drinking in the sallow moonlight. The beast's eyes burned like embers, and its presence was a weight on the air, a promise of souls to be reaped. Faolan's eyes, cold and sharp, scanned the streets for trouble. He had learned long ago that trouble didn't need an invitation in this city, especially not tonight. The gilded Moor's cryptic summons still gnawed at him, passing notes in the moonlight. "You're Faolan Shadowblades. Headhunter. They say you're nastier than most,
that you leave bodies where others leave promises.
He'd had half a mind to retort, I didn't come here for you to tell me who I fucking am. I know who I am, don't I? You seem to prefer hiding behind a fucking mask, though, so I find you suspect, and I'll take my leave. It had been in his mind to speak these words, but others tumbled out of his mouth when he let his tongue wag. Funny that he didn't normally mince his words. It wasn't down to some supernatural power of the mysterious patron in his midst, some inveiglement of pacification. No, it weren't that. It had a lot to do with how skint he was, and how hunger dampens the fire of an incendiary spirit. Besides, he liked getting paid. The veiled patron's gold was heavy in his pouch, but their words were heavier. Kumak Nananamo's dues. Persuade him. The red mist gathers. They'd been cagey, their obsidian mask hiding more than just a face. Faolan wasn't fool enough to trust a client who spoke in riddles. But work was scarce, and the promise of a favour from one so shrouded in power was a rare coin indeed. Still, something stank worse than the low quarters gutters. Why him? Why not their usual boys? He'd find out soon enough. The black distillery loomed at the city's edge, a squat fortress of blackened stone, its chimneys belching fumes that stung the throat. Its iron-bound doors, pitted and warded with she runes, barred the way to his payday. The surrounding courtyard, usually alive with the raucous laughter of anamtine-drunk patrons, was eerily silent. No customers tonight, no clinking tankards or slurred songs. Only the flicker of braziers and oil burners cast dancing shadows across the cobblestones, their light mingling with the moon's sickly glow. And there, lounging against barrels and crates, were the guards, surly figures with ruddy great swords propped beside them, their blades more suited to felling trees than men. But these weren't men, not anymore. Faolan's gut tightened as he took them in. Their flesh was wrong, putrid, bloated, as if they'd been left to ripen in a bog. Eyes gleamed with molten rheum, or stared blankly through cataracts. The stench of death clung to them, sharp and sour, and their movements were jerky, like puppets on fraying strings. Undead, scarified rightgeists, if he had to guess, their souls bound to rotting flesh by cruel rites. The scars on their arms and chests, jagged and rune-etched, pulsed faintly with necrotic light, tethering their spirits to bodies that should have been dust. Faolan had faced their kind before, but these were fresh, their combat instincts still sharp, their memories lingering like ghosts in their skulls. At the centre of the group sat a man, Owen Grimwald by the look of him. Faolan knew the name, a mercenary captain who had run with Dun-shael's roughest crews. Owen was broad, his face a map of old scars, but now his skin sagged and his eyes glowed with an unnatural sheen. He hunched over a tattered map, muttering to himself, scratching his head as if trying to claw out a thought. His mates, 5 in all, sprawled around him, tankards of foul grog in hand. They chuckled at some jest, but their laughter was hollow, their gazes distant. One of them, a lanky brute with a missing ear, nudged Owen.
It's a map to your mum's house, ain't it? That's why you're all dewy-eyed. Owen loves his mum. A bit too much.
The others roared, but Owen's scowl deepened.
Piss off, Colm. It's important, I tell you. Just can't recall why.
His voice was a rasp like gravel in a grave. He clutched the map tighter, its edges worn from years of secret glances. Faolan stepped into the firelight, Faust at his heel. The Barguest growl rumbled low, a sound that made the air quiver. The undead froze, their heads snapping toward him, hands twitching toward their swords. Owen rose, map still clutched in one fist, his other hand resting on the hilt of a blade that looked heavy enough to cleave stone.
Who's this, then?
Owen's voice was thick with suspicion, his molten eyes narrowing.
Distillery's closed. Bugger off.
Faolan kept his hands loose, though his fingers itched for his swords.
Got business with Kumak.
Open the doors and we'll call it friendly. Owen barked a laugh, echoed by his mates.
Friendly, he says. You hear that, lads? This one's got balls.
He stepped closer, his stench hitting Faolan like a fist.
Kumak ain't seeing no one, especially not some headhunter with a mangy dog.
Faust's growl deepened, hackles rising, but Faolan raised a hand to still him. Barguest, not dog. And I ain't asking. Open the doors, or I'll open them myself. Colm, the lanky one, stood, hefting his great sword with a grin that showed rotting teeth.
Now I like this one. Let's carve him up, boys. It's been a dull night.
The air snapped taut, and Faolan's instincts screamed. He'd hoped to talk his way in, but these Reitgeists were spoiling for a fight, their undead flesh itching for violence. He glanced at the doors, iron-bound, warded and thick enough to stop a battering ram. Faust could break 'em, but not with these bastards in the way. Fine. Blood it was. Faust, Faolan murmured. Fetch. The Barguest lunged, a blur of shadow and teeth, slamming into Colm with the force of a landslide. The undead warrior's sword swung wild, missing as Faust's jaws clamped onto his arm, tearing through putrid flesh. Colm howled, a sound more rage than pain, and the others charged. Faolan's swords were out in a heartbeat, twin blades of blackened steel flashing in the firelight. He met Owen's great sword with a parry, the impact jarring his arms. But he twisted aside, slicing a deep gash across Owen's chest. The wound oozed black ichor, but Owen didn't falter, his scarred flesh knitting faintly, the runes pulsing brighter.
You need more than that, bastard!
Owen roared, swinging again. Faolan ducked, feeling the blade's wind graze his cloak, and drove his second sword into Owen's gut. The Reitgeist staggered, but stayed upright, grinning like a madman. Faolan cursed under his breath. Scarified Reitgeists were tough. Too tough. Their souls were bound tight, and dismemberment was the only way to free them. He glanced at Faust, who had torn Colm's arm clean off, only for the lanky bastard to swing his sword one-handed, laughing. The other four were circling, their blades gleaming with necrotic energy, their eyes burning with unholy zeal. Faolan had faced worse odds, but not by much. The fight became a whirlwind of steel and shadow. Faolan moved like a spectre, his blades a blur, carving through rotting flesh. He severed a warrior's leg, sending him crashing to the cobbles, but the bastard crawled forward, swinging. Faust was a maelstrom, his claws rending limbs, his jaws snapping bones. But the Reitgeists kept rising, their scars glowing, their bodies refusing to stay down. Owen was the worst, his great sword a relentless hammer, each swing forcing Faolan to dance back, parrying with both blades to keep his head attached. You don't quit, do you? Faolan spat, dodging another blow and slicing Owen's arm to the bone. The map slipped from Owen's grasp, fluttering to the ground, but he didn't notice, too consumed by the fight.
Quitting's for the living!
Owen snarled, lunging. Faolan sidestepped, driving both swords into Owen's chest, twisting them until black ichor sprayed. Owen staggered, but his runes flared and he swung again, clipping Faolan's shoulder. Pain lanced through him, hot and sharp, but he gritted his teeth, shoving Owen back. Faolan's mind raced. The patron hadn't mentioned undead guards, hadn't mentioned this. He'd bet his blades they'd sent others before him, their usual boys, and none had come back. The vowed patron had known, and had kept it quiet. Bastard. He glanced at the doors again. Time was wasting and the red mist was gathering, a faint crimson haze seeping from the distillery's chimneys. Whatever Kumak was doing, they were close to being done. Faust! Faolan shouted, parrying Colm's sword and kicking him into a brazier. The flames roared, licking at Colm's flesh, but he didn't scream, just laughed, his cataracts gleaming. The doors! Now! The Barguest disengaged, bounding toward the iron-bound entrance. Its claws raked the wards, sparks flying as the runes flickered, weakened by whatever dark power held sway here. Faolan fought to buy time, his blades a storm of steel. He hacked through another warrior's neck, the head rolling, but the body kept swinging until he drove his sword through its spine, pinning it to a crate. Owen charged again, map forgotten, his great sword raised. Faolan dove, snatching the map mid-roll and tucking it into his belt. No time to look now, but it was Owen's, and anything Owen valued was worth keeping. Faust's roar shook the courtyard as the Barguest slammed into the doors. The iron groaned, wards cracking like glass, and the hinges buckled. One more hit would do it. Faolan fought on, his shoulder bleeding, his breath ragged. The Rightgeists were relentless, their broken bodies lurching forward, swords swinging. Combe, armless now, charged with a dagger in his teeth, and Faolan ended him with a blade through the skull, kicking the body into the flames. It burned, but still twitched, the runes glowing faintly. "How many times do I have to kill ya?" Faolan growled, parrying Owen's latest swing. "There's no prizes for being stubborn, you know. You wind up just as dead." He was tiring, and the Rightgeists weren't. Dismemberment was the key, but there were too many, and Faust needed time. The Barguest hit the doors again, which finally gave way with a thunderous crash. Iron splintering, wards shattering, dust billowed, and Faolan saw his chance. "Faust, with me!" He broke from the fight, sprinting for the breach, Faust at his heels. Owen's roar followed, and the remaining Rightgeists gave chase, their swords dragging sparks across the cobbles. Faolan didn't look back. The distillery's interior loomed, a cavern of flickering vats and bubbling pipes, the air thick with the stench of necrosis. The red mist hung heavy, swirling like blood in water, and somewhere deep below a chant echoed, a rite nearing its climax. Faolan skidded to a halt inside, Faust growling at his side. The Rightgeists were still coming, their broken forms silhouetted in the doorway. He could keep fighting, keep breaking them, but they'd just rise again, slower each time but never stopping. The map in his belt felt like a lead weight, a clue to something Owen had valued in life. Gold, maybe, stashed in some treasure cave. A man could only hope, right? He'd look later. For now, Kumacht was the target, and the chant below meant trouble deeper than undead guards. Persistent, I'll give 'em that, Faolan muttered, turning deeper into the distillery. Faust's eyes burned, sensing souls trapped in the mist, and Faolan's blades gleamed with fresh ichor. The veiled patron had lied, and Kumacht wasn't just a chymist dodging dues. Something bigger was at play, something involving a necrourgist maybe, or a bone dancer of some sort, weaving rites in the black distillery, brewing up more trouble than that devil grog ever did. Faolan didn't know the half of it, but he'd find out soon enough, and probably wish he hadn't. Come what may, someone was going to bleed. Shadowblades was mighty opposed to the current situation. Bleeding was like drinking. It should never be done alone. The distillery's shadows swallowed him, and the red mist closed in. A crimson veil over a city on the edge of ruin. Chapter 3. The Whispers in the Workshop. The black distillery's iron doors lay in ruins, their wards shattered by Faust's relentless assault. Faolan Shadowblades had slipped through the breach, his twin swords dripping black ichor, his shoulder throbbing from Owen Grimwild's blade. The courtyard battle had been a slaughterfest, but the scarified Rightgeists, those undead bastards with those flesh-engraved runes all aglow and that relentless fury, were still coming, their broken bodies shuffling after him, dragging swords across the cobbles, kicking up sparks and making a grating sound. Their moans echoed in the night, a grim reminder that time was short. The red mist swirled thicker now, a crimson haze that stung Faolan's eyes and clung to his cloak like a curse. Inside, the distillery was a cavern of shadows and stench. Vats loomed like silent sentinels, their surfaces slick with condensation, bubbling with necrotic brews that filled the air with a sour metallic tang. Tasted bitter, like a man being set up. Pipes snaked along the walls of the workshops, hissing faintly, sometimes the hissing sounding like speech, and ghastly braziers cast a haunting, flickering light across a labyrinth of crates and barrels. Whatever was in 'em burning green flame as often as red. It wasn't that something was off. It was that nothing about this place was on. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant scrape of the Rightgeist pursuit and their fading eerie groans. Men who should be in the grave had no right to groan like that. They shouldn't be groaning, and they shouldn't be walking at all, much less manage it with broken kneecaps. Faolan kept moving. From one chamber, full of mysterious apparatus, to another. Kumak Nananam, the chymist, was nowhere to be seen. Faolan's grip tightened on his swords. Man like Kumak didn't just vanish. Not in his own fortress. And make no mistake, this gaff was a fortress. Faust's growl rumbled low, the Barguest coal-black fur bristling as it sniffed the air, its eyes burned brighter, sensing souls trapped in the mist, or perhaps something darker below. Faolan trusted the beast's instincts more than his own. Find him, boy, find him, he muttered, moving deeper into the distillery, boots silent on the stone floor. The map he had swiped from Owen Grimwald weighed heavy in his belt, a mystery for later contemplation. For now, Kumak was the prize, and the Veiled Patron's gold depended on finding him and sorting him out. Shadowblades didn't consider a man would renege on a deal with the Veiled Patron lightly. Kumak was balls deep in something rotten. Faolan drew in a ragged breath. What if the dumb fuck had got caught up in this, and had made him into some sort of alchemical undead nightmare? His senses sharpened at the thought. The chymist workshops lay at the heart of the distillery, sprawling chamber cluttered with alchemical chaos. Benches sagged under the weight of glass alembics, crucibles, and strange apparatus, their surfaces stained with unnameable residues. Potions racks lined the walls like some rich bastard's wine cellar, vials glowing faintly with animtine and necrotic liquors, their labels scrawled in a script that Faolan couldn't read. The air was thick with the reek of sulphur and decay, undercut by a faint cloying hint of lavender. A trapdoor, heavy in iron bound, sat just off from the floor's centre, its edges pulsing with faint she runes. From below came a low chant, words in the unhallowed tongue, syllables that twisted the gut and set Faolan's teeth on edge. Anyone talking like that should be persuaded otherwise. He froze as voices drifted toward him, not from below, but really close, one sharp and commanding, the other a surly rasp. Faust's hackle rose, and Faolan gestured for silence. Creeping closer to the workbenches and the trapdoor, the chanting continued from below, but Shadowblades weren't listening to it. His attention had been caught by a bizarre conversation being held, scant feet away. Stealthily he edged through the dark, along one wall, closing in on the noise.
Lavender, you reckon?
The sharp voice said, tinged with a sceptical edge.
Or a censer? Frankincense? The stench of this place clings worse than my old flame's perfume. What say ye, head?
A grim chuckle followed, then the raspy reply. Lavender's a jest, Silwraith. Censer's better. Smoke hides the rot. But if you want my advice, burn a lot. Start fresh. Like you did with that lass in Kernick.
I only burned her when she spurned my advances. I didn't raise her from the dead to be rejected,
came the retort.
Rightgeisting has its little setbacks and its downsides.
Mocking laughter resonated. A real necrourgist takes what he wants. He doesn't ask permission. Faolan peered around the corner into the chymic workshop from which the voices originated. In a flickering pool of light stood Salraith the Headtaker, an undead necrourgist acolyte, his skeletal frame draped in tattered robes. In one hand he dangled a severed head by its matted hair, its eyes rolling with unnatural life, its lips twitching as it spoke. In the other he held a sickle, its blade etched with runes that pulsed in time with the chant. On a nearby bench lay an open tome, its pages yellowed and stained, radiating a faint malevolence, illuminated by a burning lamp. 3 cult warriors lounged against the walls, their blades gleaming with necrotic fervour, their flesh as putrid as the Rightgeists outside. Salraith laughed, shaking the head.
Koenig was a mess, though. But this will be a masterpiece to make Gravebloom blush. Once I have his secrets, the crucible's almost ready, and Kumak's playing his part for now.
Faolan's blood ran cold. The crucible, the chymic slab, the patron had said nothing about, nor about necrourgists or severed heads that talked. The vowed patron's usual boys hadn't come back because they'd walked into this, a death trap woven by powers darker than Kumak's debts. Faust's growl grew louder, and Faolan cursed under his breath. Stealth was done. The Barguest had decided it. Probably that stench set him off. Either way, it was time to take action, whether or not he was having second thoughts. A favour owed is no good if you're not around to collect. He strode out into the open, brandishing his blades and grinning. It was always best to look like you was enjoying yourself, even when on the inside your brain box was a bag of doubt. The cult warriors snapped to attention, swords raised, as Salraith whirled, the head swinging wildly.
Who dares?
The acolyte hissed, his eyes glowing like twin moons in his decayed face. Faolan Shadowblades, Faolan said, closing ground, swords drawn, and ready to look menacing. Here for Kumak. Step aside, or I'll carve you a new smile. Faust followed, a shadow of teeth and claws, prowling with a snarl that rattled the vials on the racks. The head in Salraith's hand cackled.
Oh, this one's trouble, Salraith. Smells like death, him and that beast.
I'm in good company, then. Faolan glowered at the decapitated head. The cult warriors charged, their blades swinging in brutal arcs. Faolan met the first with a parry, his swords flashing, slicing through putrid flesh. The warrior staggered but kept coming, runes on his scars flaring. Faust tore into the second, claws rending armour, but the third lunged at Faolan, forcing him back toward a bench. Glass shattered underfoot, vials exploding in bursts of green and violet. A potion's contents splashed across the floor, its fumes burning Faolan's lungs, and Faust's snarl turned feral as the liquid seeped into his fur. The Barguest's teeth lengthened, gleaming like daggers, and its eyes blazed with unnatural hunger. The potion, some cursed brew, had awakened something primal in the beast. Faust launched at the third warrior, tearing him apart in a spray of ichor, limbs scattering like kindling. Faolan ducked a sickle swing from Salraith, who chanted in the unhallowed tongue, the head in his hand muttering curses. The trapdoor shook, rattling as energies unleashed below made blue waves course out from the ancient wood, then fade. The chanting continued. Stomping, groaning and scraping sounds could be heard. As the scarified Rightgeist from the courtyard reached the workshop, their broken forms shuffling closer.
You're out of your depth, headhunter!
Salraith sneered, slashing with the sickle. It was an awkward strike, and Faolan parried it, but lost his grip on one of his swords as the acolyte twisted the sickle. Buoyed by his success, Headtaker lunged, swiped and swung hard. Faolan rolled, grabbed a fallen cultist dagger from the floor, its blade etched with necrotic runes. Darting forward, he attacked the necrourgist, fluid and swift in motion. Salraith swung again, this time wildly, not expecting the speed of his opponent, and attempting to pierce the flesh of Faolan's neck. Shadowblades knew his business well. He might not be much for incanting, but when it came to blows, he'd back himself against anyone or anything. He had struck the sickle away contemptuously with his own blade, tightening his hold on the dagger. He drove it upward, under Salwraith's chin, through the soft decay of his jaw, and into his skull. The acolyte's eyes widened, runes flickering, and he collapsed backward, the dagger left in place. Hands unclenched as the body staggered and fell, the sickle thumped to the ground, the decapitated head rolling free, still muttering. "Bloody amateurs," the head rasped, before Faolan strode forth and stomped it silent with a squelch and a sickening crunch. He stooped, his calloused fingers closed around his discarded blade, reclaiming it. The remaining cult warrior, half resurrected from the floor, clawed at the trapdoor, runes glowing as his flesh knit itself back together. Faolan kicked the wretch aside, wrenching the trapdoor open. Light pulsed from below, a sickly green laced with crimson, flashing like a storm. The chant grew louder, the unhallowed tongue weaving a spell that made the air hum with power. Faust, still feral from the potion, growled, tearing out the throat of the stricken Rightgeist, his claws scraping the stone, eager to descend. Faolan hesitated, his shoulder bleeding, his breath ragged. The veiled patron had lied. Kumak wasn't just dodging dues. Was Kumak a puppet forced into some act of madness? Or had he turned on the patron willingly? The answer lay below, in the heart of the black distillery, where the red mist pulsed like a living thing. "Stay sharp, Faust," Faolan said, gripping his swords. The Barguest's eyes burned, its feral hunger a mirror to his own, and he seemed to nod, nostrils flaring. Together they descended the trapdoor's stairs, into the glowing abyss of Kumak's secret lab, where the truth and the crucible awaited. Chapter 4. The Golem's Crucible. The black distillery's hidden laboratory pulsed with a sickly green light, its air thick with the red mist and the stench of necrotic alchemy. Faolan Shadowblades descended the trapdoor's stairs, his twin sword slick with ichor, his shoulder burning from the courtyard's brutal fray. Faust, the Barguest, followed, his teeth unnaturally long from the potion he had lapped up in the workshop above, his eyes blazing with feral hunger. The scarified Rightgeist shuffled behind, their broken moans fading as the trapdoor slammed shut. But Faolan knew the real threat lay ahead. The chant of the unhallowed tongue echoed through the stone, a dirge that twisted his gut. Kumak Nananam was down here, and with him something far worse. The chymic lab was a nightmare of bubbling vats and arcane machinery, its walls lined with glowing vials and rune-etched pipes. At the centre stood the crucible, a massive chymic slab radiating a necrotic energy, its surface stained with demon ichor and human souls. On it lay the flesh golem, a grotesque patchwork of firbolg bones and rotting flesh, its veins pulsing with chaotic energy. Jutting from the giant frame of the stitchwork cadaver were vials of liquid attached by wire to nodes connected to the bubbling vats. What was brewing was unclear, and Faolan had never seen wires before, outside of the puppet theatre when he was a nipper, on the streets of the Sunder, so it was all a riddle to him. One, he figured, had the usual answer. The beast twitched, not yet alive, but close. Too close. The rites to animate this big bugger were almost complete. The air was alive with the truth of that. Above it loomed Valtharian Duskspeak, a necrourgist, his skeletal frame cloaked in tattered black, his eyes glowing like twin voids as he channeled the ritual's climax. Kumak Nananam, the chymist, stood nearby, his hands trembling as he poured a vial of crimson liquid onto the golem's chest. His face, a mask of fear or frenzy. Faolan couldn't tell which. He did notice how hastily Kumak stepped back, though. Anxiety etched on his features now. Jumpy. Didn't want it to go wrong, or was scared of dying if it did. Maybe He was scared of dying if it went right. To Faolan's mind, that was why it was best not to dabble in such. No matter how thick your gloves, you could always get your fingers burned. 2 cult warriors flanked the chymic slab, their putrid flesh marked with glowing scars, their swords gleaming with unholy fervour. The air hummed with power, the red mist swirling thicker, and Faolan felt a chill as the crucible's aura seeped into him, a whisper of corruption clawing at his soul. Sounded almost like screams heard from a distance, which he first caught up in the workshops, thinking it was the pipes. Faust growled, sensing trapped souls in the mist, and Faolan gripped his swords tighter. If souls were trying to speak, their words were falling on deaf ears. Shadowblades weren't about to chance letting any demons in, so he set his mind to ignoring the bastards. Whatever they were screaming about, it weren't any of his business. He was alive, not dead, and he planned on staying that way. The veiled patron's lies had led him here, to a rite that could shatter Dun-shael's crumbling wards, and should have been forbidden by their presence in the first place. Slay Duskspeak, decide Kumak's fate, stop the golem, or the city would fall. It was not so complex a conundrum. Seemed like destiny had taken a large dump on his plate, though, a load he didn't much fancy getting through. Mercy or vengeance? The choice loomed, and blood would seal it. He'd give Kumak an out, but if the weasel didn't take it, he'd make short work of trimming his whiskers. Kumak! Faolan's voice cut through the chant, sharp as his blades. Step away, or I'll carve you to pieces. The chymist froze, vial in hand, his eyes darting between Faolan and Duskspeak. You don't understand, he stammered, voice cracking. It's too late. Silence! Duskspeak's voice was a hiss, his hand raised, runes flaring. Who are you to interrupt my work? Head hunter. This golem will be my triumph, and Dun-shael will pay the price of its betrayal. He gestured, and the cult warriors charged, their blades swinging. Faolan met the first with a parry, his swords flashing, slicing through rotting flesh. The warrior staggered, runes glowing, and swung again, forcing Faolan back towards the vat. Faust leaped at the second, claws tearing through armour, but the warrior's scars pulsed, knitting his wounds. The Barguest's feral rage was a whirlwind, but the undead were relentless. Faolan ducked a blow, kicking a barrel over, its contents spilling. A laystone, shimmering with opalescent light, was revealed within the strange slime. He snatched it up, feeling its power surge through him. But the crucible's aura bit deeper as the necrourgist continued to chant. The corruptive influence of Duskspeak's magic was gnawing at his will. The eldritch fluctuations of foul energy coursing through the laboratory. Duskspeak chanted faster, his spell weaving threads of necrotic energy into the golem. Kumak hesitated, then stepped back, clutching his vial like a lifeline. Faolan's eyes narrowed. Was the chymist coerced, or was this betrayal? He needed answers, but first, Duskspeak had to die. Faust! The slab! Faolan shouted, dodging a warrior's sword and driving his blade into its chest. The Barguest bounded toward the crucible, claws raking the slab's nodes, disrupting the ritual. A necrotic discharge erupted, searing Faolan's flesh and scorching Faust's fur, which smouldered. The golem twitched violently, its awakening delayed. Faolan pressed the attack, slicing through the second warrior's arm, but the runes flared, and it kept coming. The air vibrated with a hum, and the vats pulsed. A necrotic burst, washing over the lab as if the liquids within were birthing nightmarish realities into a world already nightmare enough. Faolan gritted his teeth, his faith holding against the corruption, but the strain was mounting. Every breath was ragged, more ragged than the last, and his throat burned with the acrid taste of hate and loathing. He taunted Duskspeak, his words cutting deep. You're a fool, necrourgist. You're playing God with a corpse. The taunt struck true. Duskspeak's rage making his chant falter, his spell stuttering as his ire took hold. This was not time to debate ethics, but the necrourgist was sorely tempted. Temptation, when presented, had but one outcome. You had to yield to it.
You know nothing of gods, headhunter, but you'll have chance to learn at the lap of yours soon enough when you join them.
Valtharion sneered.
Where death has no hold, and life is no prison, the necrourgist will hold the keys to all cells and decide who prospers. It won't be you. And with all the lost souls snared, your pet won't have much purpose either.
Faolan seized the moment, vaulting over a bench to a vat, smashing it open. A soul vial spilled out, its blue-green liquid bubbling with alien intent. He hurled it at the first warrior, the vial exploding, dealing necrotic damage that burned through its runes. Dropping it for good, the flesh sizzled like fat dripping into a fire, and when the shrieking pain was over, the Rightgeist was unbound. Sometimes even lost souls find their way. Faolan stared down the necrourgist. It took all his mettle and all his willpower, even if they need a little help from a friendly blade. Kumak's voice broke through the chaos. I didn't choose this, he cried, backing away from Duskspeak. They forced me. This is Valtharion's will, not mine. Faolan's instinct screamed, truth or lies. He couldn't trust the chymist, not yet. The golem twitched again, its eyes flickering open, and Duskspeak laughed, his spell regaining strength. It lives! He roared, empowering the beast with a surge of necrotic energy, imploring the heavens with raised hands, a mad light in his fevered eyes, to match the glint of evil in those of the golem. Faolan fought to the crucible, Faust at his side, the Barguest once again tearing at the slab's nodes. Despite the stench of burnt hair, the prize from his last assault, a cult warrior lunged, but Faolan seized a sacred censer from the workbench, instinct informing his actions, as he could see Kumak's gaze kept falling to these containers which lay about the place. He pushed aside the Rightgeist, though it bit his arm hard, and he grit his teeth. He lit the censer with glowing charcoals as Faust switched his attention to staving off the cult warrior, the fumes now searing the undead, weakening their runes. The second warrior fell quickly to Faolan as Faust tore into the reeling Rightgeist with the blood-soaked teeth. Then Duskspeak's offer came, cold and tempting. Betray the Veil Patron, headhunter. Join us, and I'll pay in leystones and gold. Swear the oath, or serve in death. Faolan spat, declining with a snarl. I'll serve you a grave, and you can keep your tainted gold for Arawn. You'll need it to repay the debt owed him from all those souls you torn from his halls. Duskspeak's threat followed. Fall, and you'll rise as my warrior. I swear it. Those are halls you'll never see. The words lingered, a curse that promised undeath if Faolan faltered. He wouldn't. He couldn't. Forspoken, his soul was on the line. An insistent growling drew his attention back to the moment. The golem awoke, its roar shaking the lab, its massive frame lurching off the slab. It swung at Faust, its fists dripping with raw louche, which seared into the Barguest's hide, inflicting a deep gash that bled and bled. The matted fur of Faust was soon coated in slick blood. Faolan dove under the golem's reach as it struck his ally, driving his swords into Duskspeak's chest. The necrourgist was so proud of his creation he had taken his eyes off his opponent. Valtharion screamed, runes in the flesh of his forearms flaring, but Faolan twisted the blades, severing his connection to the golem. Duskspeak collapsed, his body blackening, smoking, and then crumbling to ash, his whispers fading into the mist. The golem went mad, attacking Kumak with a violently flailing limb of grotesque size, who screamed as its fist grazed him. Faolan tackled the chymist, shoving him clear, and turned to face the beast. Faust, blooded but unrelenting, tore at its legs, slowing it. The flesh golem glanced down, but didn't seem to register the pain. The Barguest was more of a nuisance than a threat. Faolan smashed a barrel as he was thrust into a wall. It exploded, revealing a trapped lockbox, gold skittering across the stone as it crashed down,
but the barrel was laced with necrotic ichor that burned Faolan where it spattered across his exposed flesh, pushing him closer to total corruption. The foul energies in this place were persistent, grueling. He ignored the burning, using the laystone he had gathered to empower his strike. It shattered as his swords carved through the golem's chest. The beast roared, then began to choke on rising torrents of black blood. This spewed from its mouth through piteous groans. Then it collapsed, its demon ichor blood pooling on the cold stone which tremoured with the unleashed necrotic pulse. Silence fell, broken only by Kumac's ragged breathing. Faolan turned, swords raised. "Talk, chymist. Truth or you die. Did you mean any of this? Or did these sick fucks force you to it?"
Kumac's eyes were wide, his hands shaking.
"Valtharion. He broke the wards somehow. Shouldn't be able to enter Dun-shael. This thing forced me to craft the golem. They brought it in through tunnels, in pieces. Carried it in here by nights. Chunk after chunk. Gods! I stitched it together, but it was never by my own volition. The patron's dues I couldn't pay. Not with him watching. I've others who support my work, sponsor my experiments and endeavours. I do much work you might consider nefarious, and I dare say amoral, but I'd never do this willingly. You must believe me. This goes against everything I stand for, or used to stand for."
He faltered, eyes betraying his fall from grace.
"I suppose you could call me a principal astray, but spare me, I beg you. I'll fight for you. Betray this cult. I'll make it right."
His voice cracked, raw with fear. Faolan's mind raced. The vowed patron's gold was as good as his, but Kumac's fate was now in his hands also. Kill him, and the coffers would overflow. He could see the gold in this place, the coins glinting at him in the eldritch light. But the chymist's knowledge could be worth more, and if he could still find means to betray the cult, it meant there were more of the bastards. What took down Dun-shael would as like spread and come for his own people. The bone carvers were not immune from the poisons coursing through the lifeblood of the land. Faust contemplated Kumac, head tilted. Faolan opted to test Kumac's words, his will piercing the man's fear. Truth. Coercion. Not the zeal of the deranged. "Swear it," Faolan said, offering a deal. Kumac nodded, setting his jaw and stiffly moving to an undisturbed vat. He dipped a container into the vile filth and then tossed a necrotic vial on the flesh golem's remains, just as it began to convulse with regenerative life. The liquid burst across the cadaverous giant, eating into it, dissolving it. The stench was as vile as the liquid. A new figure emerged from the shadows. A necrourgist initiate, walking in at the wrong time, his boots making soft sounds on the stairs into the secret laboratory.
"Whatever Sari did or said this time, I can only say this kind of treatment must stop. A phylactery only has so many uses, and—"
The initiate's voice caught in his throat. He took in the scene, enraged, wielding a spell that was laced with corruption, directed into Faolan's soul. Faust bounded forth with preternatural speed, ending him with a savage lunge. The initiate was crumpled over on the stairs, broken like a discarded rag doll, the dying breath not enough to sustain the inchoate incantation. Faolan patted the wet fur of Faust as he stooped over the dead initiate. As Kumac quietly gathered a few essentials in his wake, the necrourgist had a scroll in his hand. Shadowblades took it gently from the dead fingers. He found it was a writ, a traitor's coin from Dun-shael's High Court, promised to the necrourgy. It certainly implicated the chieftain, or someone in his household. The plot ran deeper than he'd thought. Might be of interest to the one who sent him here.
"Where are you going? You can't leave without me. They'll skin me alive if they find me now,"
the chymist stammered. "Sounds like a you problem," Shadowblade sniffed. "I played my part in this unseemly." Kumac swallowed fear.
"If they find me, I can't be responsible for what I might tell them."
He stood defiantly, looking ridiculous in his armoured coat with his darting eyes. Wherever they went, there were no friends to be found.
"I know of a place. The Shattered Ossuary. It's their lair in Dun-shael. There are more of them.
You push your luck, chemist. I'm going to get paid. You, I don't care for.
Shadowblades turned his back and began to walk up the stairs, Faust by his side. I'll pay. Let's end this, headhunter. My coin must surely be as good as any other. I'm no fool. It's my life I'm buying. Come on. Surely you can see its only reason.
The red mist cleared, the crucible's light fading. Faolan and Faust stood amidst the wreckage, Kumak trundling along at their side, a fragile ally with a bag of fragile friends. Loosh bombs, he called them. Some choices made themselves, Faolan reckoned. The vowed patron's gold awaited, but the writ was burned into Faolan's mind, a thread to pull, a truth to hunt. His blades had written a verdict in blood, but the thinning veil hungered for more. Dun-shael's shadows would not rest, and neither would he.